welcome, I think is how I'm supposed to start these things. Pete's been running around Europe, going to all types of sporting events, yelling at football games and soccer games, and apparently his voice is hurt. So I think he's probably at a pub somewhere, but that's fine. I can handle this, and me and Nikki, the boss, will take care of the the late pick five at Keeneland. Boss man, what's going on?
Not much. I'm doing all right. Doing a lot better than our fearless leader, PTF, who's been over there imbibing and celebrating and went over in time for a Giants win. So we knew it was going to be ugly after that.
Absolutely. Yeah. He had his Lawrence Taylor jersey on. I saw with a photo he sent for that game. And so he seems to be having a good time. While I got you, I got to ask you, I've texted you privately. Congratulations on the morning line job at Keeneland, which is a thankless job and a job that, and no offense, it's a job where I don't understand why so many people give a damn. It doesn't really matter to me. But boss man, congratulations. How's that been going for you?
Thank you. I appreciate it. Should be congratulations, right? It's been good. You know, I didn't file away any excuses, but the first few cards we were on a family vacation that had been planned a while before that. So I was somewhere in the Gulf of Mexico making the first 3 morning lines. And most people would probably say, well, your lines yesterday were the worst of the meat. So I was back on dry land by then. But it is kind of amazing how many people really get very energized about it. And I guess, I was thinking about this, and I guess the reason why is that a lot of people that will, and I'm not looking to disparage any, group of horse players, but I think a lot of people use the morning line as a guide when they're putting together a multi-race bet, and they might come up a little bit short on their handicapping. And if I put odds that are too high and they end up not getting the value that they're seeking, then they get a little indignant. At least that's my best explanation. I mean, beyond that, there's just a lot of people that like to complain about everything, but I've engaged with everybody so far. And, look, if you're out there and you have something to say, that's my Twitter handle. You can tag me. There's no reason to discuss it without including me. I'm happy to discuss it, and I guarantee you won't hurt my feelings. I'm a very secure man, so I'm not terribly worried about that.
I was talking to someone about it, actually, about the line, and I think that Saratoga and Keeneland, I think even maybe more so, are really tough because I think both of those places are very, very info driven because of the connections. Everyone knows someone who works on a farm, who knows someone who broke someone, who knew this, who knew that, who works it, who has the stallion, who has the mare. And I feel like what happens a lot of times is there's buzz horses that you're just never going to be able to get out in front of. You're never going to be able to predict whether or not this horse is going to take a ton of money. I think if you get an allowance type of race, a stakes type of race, I think those lines are probably going to be a little bit easier to make. But these 16 claimers where horses are trading at Belterra or trading off the farm, you're going to miss on those because there's going to be, it happens. We've all hung out at Keeneland and you've heard about the so-and-so that can't lose the sixth. I think that has a lot to do with it because of the info driven kind of culture of a Keeneland, more so than a Churchill, a Keeneland or a Saratoga.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it for sure. I mean, look, there was a horse in the nightcap on Wednesday named Coleridge for Bill Mott. Irad was riding, and I will admit one thing, and I should have known. I should have seen this coming from a mile away. Nobody drives the market like Irad. I mean, the money that comes in on the horses he is riding. I've scoffed at his inability to have a decent ROI in the past. It's not the poor guy's fault, right? I mean, the public just hammers every horse that he's riding. So, I think one of the mistakes that I made with that horse was that that's not a horse I would ever bet, right? A Bill Mott horse off a long layoff that won a weak maiden race with a big pace setup. And I think that's probably why I kicked the horse's odds up a little bit too much. So looking at it and trying to get back to the task of assessing how the public is going to approach it, that's the key. And that's a challenge, right? I mean, it's a moving target. But yeah, yesterday was a little difficult. But there were a few races where there were scratches that adjusted the number of horses in the field, obviously changed the points around. It also changed the pace dynamic. It gave everybody something to bitch about, whatever.
All right, well, let's bitch about this pick five.
There's 10 more today, 10 more Friday, 10 more Saturday. I'm telling you, I got a long way to go.
All right, well, what did you do in race 6 on Saturday? We got a maiden special weight, and you made the 7, Sunny River, Judd Mont, Brad Cox, Florent Giroux, has some experience, has fast figures, never out of the exacta. I think you're pretty safe making this one the favorite.
Yeah, if this horse doesn't go off the favorite, then I need to find a different line of work, right? And look, inventing is going to get a lot of support, and deservedly so. But the problem with inventing is that I think we kind of got a gauge on exactly who she is 2 starts back at Saratoga when she was a pretty dull third behind She's Keen and Forever After All. And those 2 runners were both coming from Churchill. We've continued to see the Kentucky shippers do really well at Saratoga year in and year out. And then I thought inventing would run better with the blinkers last time. Tizzy from the Sky, or Tizzy in the Sky, is a really good horse. I think one that you and I both needed when she came up just short to Johnny V's 11,000th win at Saratoga back on Travers Week. And she came back and just absolutely dusted this field at Aqueduct on September 23rd. But that being said, Sunny River looks to have a pace edge. She, to me, in a multi-race play, is a pretty viable single. I would probably use the obvious horses as backups, both inventing and Forever After All. I searched long and hard otherwise in here. I really didn't see anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that if you're trying to get real super clever, the Sweet Lady Ivanka thing could possibly work. I mean, she's run okay. She's had a tough trip last time. She's been wide in basically all of her starts. And Kenny kind of I feel like Kenny sets horses up for Keeneland. I think that he likes to win there, obviously being from Lexington, and he always seems to kind of jump up and bite you. And I think Brian Hernandez is one of those riders that can move a horse up, and really give you that type of ride that can get a horse that's not supposed to win a chance to win. But I agree, Sunny River from a speed figure standpoint, having gone the mile race twice, he's going to be fit. He's going to have everything that she needs to kind of get the job done here. And I think she's the type of horse that you can single as well. Race 7, maiden special weight on the grass. I'm sure. How are you digging in pretty deep with pedigrees? When I know you do when you're betting. Are you digging in very deep with pedigrees when you're making the line?
Yeah, same level. I'll go through dam or sire stats, dam information. Look at their PPs through Formulator, and then look at the progeny, just to try and get a gauge. There was a horse that won yesterday that was first time turf that had some pedigree on the dam side, and maybe I underrated it just a tad. With that said, there's really not a lot of interesting pedigree in this race at all. Wesley's filly Ashcroft, or Wesley's colt, I should say, Ashcroft, is out of a dam who was a turf winner and a stakes winner on the turf. And she banked a little over 100,000. She's dropped a couple of turf winners. There's some second family turf pedigree on the 9-team leader who, this is an interesting horse from a morning line perspective, because you have to take into consideration what the public has done with these horses in the past. And this horse obviously trains well, because he has gotten a ton of money in each of his first 2 starts, including a Saratoga maiden special weight race, albeit one that lacked a Todd Pletcher and a Chad Brown that was going to get a lot of money. It was just a 5-horse field, but then he came right back and was favored again at Churchill. So I'm wondering if maybe going to turf, being a street boss, might improve this horse a little bit. The dam is a half to Tiziquina, who was a graded stake winner on turf. She won the Churchill Distaff Turf Mile on the Derby undercard in, I think, 2011, somewhere in that range from Mike Stidham. And this horse is getting blinkers for the first time as well. I'm very intrigued to see how the public handles him. I also thought that the 4 Worthington was going to get a lot of support. Mike Maker trainee, second time out, who ran behind Gaslight Dancer, who came back and finished in the money in the futurity at Aqueduct over the weekend. So that was those were the principles from a morning line perspective. Wesley Ward's horses are getting a tremendous amount of money as well. So that's ultimately why I went to Ashcroft as the favorite. Giovanino on the outside, who's one letter away from being a very interesting name for you, but that name's still available. But Giovanino actually ran kind of a sneaky good race on debut. It was at Indianapolis, but this is a horse who I could see getting some money second time out. I made this horse 6-1, which I think is probably going to lead people to believe I want to bet him, but no, I just think the public's going to bet him.
Yeah, I think a couple of other horses. Yes, I did notice the 12 Giovanino. I actually told G this morning. I was like, almost. There is a Giovanina. There's 2 Giovaninas that I found that were. One of them was like from 2002 that ran at Mountaineer, and the other one was a Mexican bred horse that ran in Puerto Rico. So I don't know.
They're out there.
You got to wait a little bit longer to pull that one off. But a couple that I thought were interesting. I think if Code 1 gets in, this horse sprinted last time, took a little money for Doug O'Neill, now stretching out. It's a horrible post, but if the horse can kind of take back, make one run, the horse would be a big price, especially if it sneaks in off the AE And then the other one was the 6 missions. Um, a lot of times, what I'll do in situations like this is if a horse takes some money, runs well, like this horse did, going 5.5, then goes to Kentucky Downs and doesn't run particularly well, I blame it on Kentucky Downs.
Yeah.
No offense to our friends at Kentucky Downs. I'm just saying, it's a tricky course. You're left, you're right, you're up, you're down, and I forgive a horse for that situation. And I think that it's a little bit interesting, especially with a trainer like Rudolph Brissett, who gets on a lot of his horses. I trust distance changes with Rudy because he's on their backs. He's not getting it secondhand from an exercise rider. You think we'll go longer? Exercise rider's like, yeah, boss, we'll go longer. Like, he's actually on the horse. And so even though they tried the 7 and it failed, the fact that he comes right back at a mile makes me think that he'll like this added distance, and obviously has some talent from the way this horse ran going 5.5. So that was the only other one that I would probably use as well. And the 4 Worthington, they're going to bet the horse. I don't know. He's 18-1 first time out at Kentucky Downs for Maker. That seems like there wasn't, like, maybe that was just the horse ran well on that track, being a horse with maybe some bottom to him that like a lot of these Maker horses do. So I'm not going to toss the horse, but I'd be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked if the horse didn't win. On to race 8, what is this, third leg? Yes, third leg of the pick 5. And I just thought that the 6's name was really funny. You're So Silly. Very clever.
Yeah, good work there. Not the proper your, but we'll let them get away with it. Interesting name, no doubt, and probably one of 2 potential speed horses in here.
Yeah, I would think so. I would think that one, maybe 8 Broke from the Rail, has a ton of speed as well. And Cancel This.
Yeah,
I every time I see that, I want to say Can't Sell This, which is hilarious too. Can't Sell This has some speed as well. And Martin Garcia, from his olden days, he knows how to be forward on a horse.
He does. I actually made Cancel This the favorite. I thought her last race was very good and really kind of signaled the readiness for a forward move. I didn't know, it's always tricky when you're looking at a horse like Scenic Masterpiece and the public is going to say, wow, she ran against CC. And I mean, she got in the gate with CC and she finished 4th, which was not a bad effort at all, even though it was a 5-horse field. Speed figure wise, it wasn't anything better than what Cancel This did last time out. And I don't feel like Cancel This's improvement in her last start was not consistent with what we had seen already.
Right.
So
yeah, I mean, you cut out a little bit. No, you cut out a little bit. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I thought she made sense. Scenic Masterpiece was another one who obviously deserves some consideration. Jonathan Wong's barn is obviously all over the country, and she's a filly who's run well enough now a couple of times on dirt to really be given some consideration here. I do think that You're So Silly. Phil Simms is a guy who's historically done well at Keeneland, and I'd like to give this horse some consideration too. The problem is she really came out of nowhere last time out, right? She was 26-1, won that race from just off a hot pace, and really improved by leaps and bounds from prior starts. I like cutbacks, but this was one that even I would have had a hard time getting to. So we'll see. She should get a really good trip outside stalking. We talked a little bit about Ain't Broke, who looks like the main speed from the inside. I'd kind of throw a blanket over this field because I think that I can go narrow in the first leg. I can be manageable in the second leg. I can get a little wide here because I think I've got a single coming up in the 9th.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a tough situation because, you got to think that the rail Ain't Broke is going to probably send away from there fresh off the layoff from the inside. We can do take back and try to make one run. No, you just send away from there. You're So Silly, Scenic Masterpiece, kind of drawn towards the outside. I want to make sure I have a ticket with Napa Candy on it. Just a horse who, was trying a little bit longer in the past. Now is cutting back. Didn't run well this summer, but I can kind of forgive that performance with a little bit of another break. I just think that Napa Candy is the type of horse that could pick up the pieces if someone's going to pick up the pieces. But man, I got to have the 1, I got to have the 2, the 4, the 5, the 6. Like you said, I think you could try to get Slim somewhere else, especially if you can single in the first leg, which I plan on doing. Race 9, one of my favorite races, and has a little bit more of a significance this year than I think in other years. But the QE2, the Queen Elizabeth II, the last chance for these fillies to run against straight 3-year-olds and kind of their version of the Breeders' Cup, as it were, probably a cut below running in the Breeders' Cup filly and mare turf. Boss man, is it a Chad Brown situation again at Keeneland?
I mean, it looks like it, right? McCulloch, I will admit, I was never really that warm to McCulloch. And I thought that with the Moonlight was a total cinch in Saratoga. And last time out, I tried that foreign horse to beat McCulloch a little bit in the multi-race plays, and she's just one of those Chad horses that seems to show up. I don't want to put her on a pedestal with horses like Rushing Fall or those types, but the more you bet against these horses, the more you realize they generally just are pretty productive. The only thing I think that could work against her here is it does look like there'll be almost no pace on whatsoever. Timeform US has the 5, Bella Bell on the lead. I'm envisioning that Flavian Pratt is going to put Gina Romantica on the lead. I know she wasn't close to a particularly slow pace last time out. The interesting thing about her is that on dirt, she actually had speed, but on turf, she seems to have more of a closing kick. But I would think that, Pratt being a guy who's pretty astute and Chad knowing how to read the racing form as well, I would imagine they'll put her somewhat forwardly. If it's not her, it likely will be Bella Bell, but I don't think McCulloch will be too far back. And I think that'll probably be just about all she wrote. I thought the Jockey Club Oaks Invitational was a pretty compelling performance. I think the 1 1/8 is still well within her scope, even if she might be just a little bit better going longer.
Yeah, exactly. I think the same thing about McCulloch. I think that's where she kind of started to take over those the Turf Tierra races as they got longer. I think that's kind of her game a little bit. The further, the better. But I'm not like trying to beat her going 1 1/8. What I will say this is with Bella Bell, I like horses that can be aggressively placed. I can't play California horses coming to the East Coast and racing on softer ground against what I think are mostly better turf horses. So I really couldn't get into that. Sure, Near's Eve is one that I wouldn't be shocked if they won. The one horse that I think is really interesting and doesn't help a lot of people in this pick 5 conversation is She's Gone. Mike Maloney pointed out to me a long time ago that Vicky Oliver does this for G. Watts Humphreys. She takes her fillies, she gets them stakes placed, and then she gets them sold for him. She's Gone's going to take back, make one run while the other ones are trying to win, and she's going to clunk up for third. If you're trying to do that reverse try thing, Nick, I know you've done from time to time. I know our friend Travis Stone likes to do it as well. I think She's Gone's an absolutely amazing key underneath. And I think you make a great point with Gina Romantica trying to get to the front. She doesn't have a ton of speed as of late, but she's had it in the past. And the connections and the relationship with Chad and Peter Brandt, I don't think he's ever going to have to convince Peter Brandt to let him send one of his horses, because look what happened with An Italian when they started doing that. She was basically a rabbit in a race, and now she's a dual grade 1 winner finding herself on the front end. So I don't think that conversation is going to be hard for Chad to say, hey, we're going to send Gina Romantica to the front.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think it'll be an easy sell. And Peter Brandt won the First Lady last year with Blowout in wire-to-wire fashion. Blowout was another filly who got really good when they really let her do her thing on the front end. I feel that we were being a little negligent to not mention this horse, but our mutual friend Craig Bernick has the 7 Paris Peacock coming over from Europe. And I really tried to dig into this horse's form as much as possible to get an accurate gauge on the morning line. And I wasn't going to allow Pat Cummings' opinion to sway me, because he said he thought she would be about 6 or 8 to 1. I made her 10 to 1. She's obviously a filly who's moving forward. I think the distance suits her ideally. She's gotten better since they got her back to 1 mile and a furlong. Obviously, a little bit of moisture in the turf would help her chances as well. There was some rain on Wednesday. There's a little rain in the forecast on Saturday. The problem, Jonathan, is she's not been running against good horses. The horses she's been running against are a lot lesser. The runner-up last time out came back and finished 10th of 13 in a race at Newmarket on October 7th. So I just feel like she's even and this is a weaker than Park Huey too, right? You and I have seen some really good versions of this race, including last year where Shantasara and Technical Analysis were both graded stake winners coming in that had really strong resumes. This is a little bit lesser field. I wish we could take this race and the Sands Point and merge it together and put everybody in the gate at the same time. But so I think it might be a little bit too much of an ask for Paris Peacock. But those of you who really tout Euro form and prefer Euro form, you might find your way into using her at 8 or 10 to 1.
And then we're going to wrap it up with a starter allowance for 3-year-olds and up, which started for a claiming price of 20 or less in 2021 and 2022. I think I've gotten to this opinion where these are actually, outside of grade 1s, the most formful races, because these horses qualify for this condition when they were a completely different animal, and now they are this animal. Which horse do you feel like has really transformed and maybe might have this field over a barrel?
I mean, Feast feels like it. He's very, very fast, and he's got one of the best front end riders in the game on board. He might be a little bit better going shorter, but that last furlong will not be terribly tough to negotiate if you've got a couple of length cushion on everybody else. And he beat Hollis last time out at Monmouth. Hollis is a very, very fast horse, so you'd have to imagine that Feast will be hard to keep from getting to the front end, and how much pressure ends up getting put on him. Anybody who wants to go is probably on a suicide mission. So I think he'll be pretty tough to handle. He is not that far removed from his $20,000 race that makes him eligible for this. It was actually in April of this year at Keeneland. So we know he can race over this oval, and he didn't perform poorly that day at all. He did set a fast pace and got a little tired late. Sias has some familiarity. The horses from Churchill coming out of that 7th race on September 21st, I think obviously deserve some mention in Beverly Park and the Queen's Jewels. The other one in there was, don't forget, Alexandros was in the field also. So we've got a lot of horses coming out of there. I kind of use the way the public bet that race as a little bit of a guide as to how they might handle it this time around. And Beverly Park went off 7-2 and ended up wiring that field. I think he'll get a good trip stalking outside of Feast. I felt like between Beverly Park and the Queen's Jewels, they really provided the only real challenge for Feast, and I'd be comfortable having some combination of those three.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, these races with these horses, they're different animals. Feast is a different animal. Was in a listed stake last time. He makes his own trip, which is also a big plus when you're looking at these types of races. And then to top it off, the only other horses I felt like were main competition have similar styles to Feast. So if Feast goes too fast, they're going too fast, and it sets up for a horse I can't really find. So I think if you're going to use some alternatives, I would look for horses that come from off of it. I'm going to be ice cold to Feast as an A horse, and I'm going to use Beverly Park as a B, as a sole B there. I just feel like the race has to go through Feast based on the speed figures and the consistent speed figures, not just one number. The last 3 numbers all win this race. So I'll be ice cold there.
Yeah, I could see it. One horse that I thought might get a little look from me is the 2 Alexandros. The only reason I say that is because, first off, a lengthy layoff for the new trainer. This horse was ridden aggressively by John Court, was forwardly placed, ended up tiring. Ideally, I think he wants to settle and make one run from off of it. So I think you could see some improvement from him at what could be a decent price as well. And since we've mentioned good names along the way, I will say that the 3 Hooper Drives the Boat is a very good, the reference, right? One of the greatest.
What is it?
Jaws, right? Hooper was the guy who, he tells. You've seen Jaws, haven't you?
Yes, I've seen Jaws.
Yeah, of course.
Don't Andy Serling. Don't Andy Serling me about my. I've seen. Jaws.
I knew you had seen Jaws. That's an easy one, but Hooper Drives the Boat. Who I think he caps out the word maximum with the Jockey Club. I think it's 18 letters, so you can't go beyond that. But they got their money's worth.
That's beautiful. Boss man, I appreciate it. We went for a little bit longer because we paused in the middle for a couple of minutes, but also because I talked more than I said I was going to. I just got excited to see you.
That's not a problem. I don't blame you. The excitement was mutual, and the public is getting a big dose of me this week with Pete overseas. Gabby Gaudet and I did the Thursday and Friday shows, and I'll be back for the Sunday action as well for guests to be named later.
But boss man, good luck with that morning line, and you know what? You can tell the haters.
You got it. I'm ready.
All right, man. Talk soon. Thanks.